Wow, that was amazing. Alright. Oh, that was also really good. Okay. I really like that too. Oh, come on. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today I'm so excited to finally give you my full review on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. A huge thank you to Sony Pictures Animation for giving me the chance to watch this early on an IMAX screen, but not necessarily an IMAX sound, and we'll talk about that in my review. And guys, thank you so much for being patient with me. I was under the weather yesterday, still a little stuffy, but I feel great. I'm blessed. I am just thanking God that I have the chance to talk about this movie because, guys, oh yeah, it's great. The movie is now in theaters, so you can check it out, and when you do, you gotta let me know what you think in the comments. But it's directed by three guys: Joaquim Santos, Kemp and Justin K. Thompson, and it stars Shameik as Miles Morales, Hailee Steinfeld as Gwen, Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara, Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker, Issa as Spider-Woman or Jessica Drew, and Brian Tyree Henry as Jefferson Davis. This is a direct sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, and normally I would say, oh, sometimes sequels will catch you up to speed. You need to watch Into the Spider-Verse, and if you haven't rewatched it since 2018, you should probably do it again, because this movie is so much better when you have Into the Spider-Verse fresh in your mind. But in case you need a little plot summary without spoiling anything, of course, let's talk about that. Miles Morales catapults across the multiverse in Across the Spider-Verse, where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. But when the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles must redefine what it means to be a hero. This is still largely a coming-of-age tale for Miles. He's 15 years old, he's navigating that next step going to college, while also trying to figure out how to be the best Spider-Man he can be for his city, and the best son he could be for his parents. So I love what they did here, and we will talk about why that actually is felt in this movie. But before we get into my positives, a couple of my negatives, I know, and my final thoughts. If it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, join the Real family, and let me know down below in the comments what you think of this film and your rating when you see it this weekend. Oh, and smash that like button, because it's going to help get this video in the faces of more Spider-Man fans. Now, if you don't know, guys, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time. That guy's amazing. I pretty much am Peter Parker, so I'm just lacking the web-slinging element to my life, but I will say this is just everything I could have wanted. So let's begin with the very first positive for Across the Spider-Verse, and that's this. Guys, this movie is a perfect sequel that joins the ranks of Empire Strikes Back and Spider-Man 2. Producing a sequel that is either just as good as its predecessor or even better is pretty tough to accomplish in any medium, especially when your big brother is Into the Spider-Verse, a movie that I gave a 5 out of 5 to. But this team accomplishes something that I haven't seen or felt in years. It takes the elements of the first film, it combines that in the sequel, and actually expands upon them to create, yes, another masterpiece. I mean, it's tough to say that the first film in a trilogy is a masterpiece and the second one is also a masterpiece. Usually one or the other, in my opinion, will be better, but guys, they're both equally amazing to me. And what's really cool is that there were certain elements that were better here than the first film, like the animation, the storytelling, and the direction. So let's segue into the direction itself, because I want to start here. I was ecstatic when I heard that we had 3 directors working on this movie. And usually a trio of directors on one film is just a recipe for disaster. There's many conflicting viewpoints, too many hands in the pot, but for this movie, guys, all 3 of them worked in harmony. Of course, we have Joaquim Santos, who directed episodes of The Legend of Korra and episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, including that incredible series finale. And honestly, there were some elements that I noticed in his directing style that bled into this movie. He directed 8 episodes of Avatar The Last Airbender, one of them being Sozin's Comet Part 4, and in that finale, Aang is learning about what it must take to sacrifice for his loved ones and to basically save the world, and how his purpose is now fully realized. In Across the Spider-Verse, we see those similar story beats at play with Miles, who's struggling with being the superhero his city needs and being a great son to his parents. But even outside of Joaquim dos Santos, Kemp Powers and Justin K. Thompson lend their voice perfectly to this movie. There are so many elements that all three of them basically have that they bled into this film and just made it so much better. And I do love that all three directors got some of the best voice work in recent memory out of these actors. If anything, the actors who we saw in Into the Spider-Verse, Shameik Moore and Hailee Steinfeld, for example, they were just much better here. And I have to give some of that credit to the directors, because it seems like they pushed everyone an extra mile and allowed for an even more layered performance with each actor. Now let's swing into the animation itself, because I can't discuss this movie without talking about the animation. All I could say to myself once the credits ran was, wow, wow, and a wow. And I wasn't the only one. It was really a joy to turn to my right and see this young boy watching Across the Spider-Verse, and his jaw was on the floor, his eyes were wide, he was smiling, and he was tapping who I believe was his father, and he kept saying, "Dad, look, it's Spider-Man. And they're everywhere." And I'm like, oh, this is so cool, guys. So the animation here is so similar, of course, to the first film, but for me, it felt more refined, and if anything, the scale was larger in Across the Spider-Verse. But where you can tell the animation is being taken to another level is in this cold open before the title card drops. We get a deeper dive into Gwen's life post Into the Spider-Verse, that's all I'll say, and the animation on display is absolutely beautiful. They of course still play with hand-drawn elements, but the backgrounds, the backdrops in this cold open are full of beautiful pastels, vibrant pinks, and some deep blues, depending on the emotion of the characters on screen. Guys, that is so cool. But that's just one example of the breathtaking animation in this movie. Quite frankly, I just think all of the animation is on another level, and like I mentioned, it is better than the first movie. And even jumping between multiverses was just much more immersive because of how incredible the animation was on screen. We got so many characters in different art styles too, like Scarlet Spider, who's voiced by Andy Samberg, great character in this movie, minor role, but the cell shading was dope. Like, that was so neat to me. It was just incredibly mind-blowing. How did they storyboard for all of this? It was just so cool, and all the action was seamless. Even the chase sequence when we're in the Spider Society and we see Miles being chased by Miguel O'Hara and every other spider person, it was just breathtaking. So we've got great direction, we have insanely perfect animation, but guys, Across the Spider-Verse doesn't leave a complete impact without the voice acting of our cast. Guys, I didn't think they could really step it up here. I mean, if they just gave us exactly what we got Into the Spider-Verse, I'd be happy. But there was more emotion here, and you know what? They needed to deliver that because the overall tone of the movie has a much heavier emotional weight to it. It's more mature, and sure, the humor here is great. If anything, the humor might actually be better here than in the first film. But, guys, there are some elements here that get you right in your feels. So let's start with Shameik Moore as Miles. He's Mr. Consistent here, and honestly, I felt like his comedic timing was even better than in the first movie. He's more confident as Spider-Man, and he's able to bring it down to a grounded level as Miles. This movie doesn't work without him, okay? Shameik Moore, man, from dope to this, it's just so cool to see the progression in his career. However, he's able to convey a sense of maturity for a 15-year-old character in this role. Listen, one of my favorite scenes in this film is between Miles and Rio, who's voiced by Luna Lauren Velez, and guys, their moment, it's just a one-on-one conversation. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say that this conversation was not only so heartfelt because of the acting here, but you can just tell the way they worked in the silence even was impactful. It just is so cool to see Shameik Moore just really taking his voice acting to another level as Miles. And I actually like Miles' rapport with Gwen in this movie much more than in the first film. Sure, they give them much more screen time together, but boy, you could just feel their chemistry was a lot stronger. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like I heard that Hailee Steinfeld wasn't in the studio, in the booth with Shameik more for the first film, and that she was now for the sequel, so you can kind of tell that the chemistry was much better there. So this is probably a good time to transition to Hailee Steinfeld as Gwen. Guys, Hailee Steinfeld, I had a conversation with one of my good friends yesterday, and he told me that she's not in much, but when she is, she's pretty much great in everything. And you know what? I have to agree with that because, again, as Gwen, she's amazing in this movie. It's like a night and day difference in terms of the amount of emotion in this role, but also the time that we get spent with Gwen. She gets much more material to work with here in Across the Spider-Verse, and deservedly so, because I wanted to see a little bit more about Gwen to then feel the impact of her and Miles' relationship. And there are a lot of gut punch moments in this movie that don't work without the context of Gwen, her life after the first film, and the deeper dive into Miles and Gwen's connection. So it's just beautiful storytelling, wonderful writing, of course, and it's really nice to see that the actors just help elevate this film to another level, and Hailee Steinfeld is not the exception there. She is included in that. I love what she did here. And then there's Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara, or Spider-Man 2099, and he does a great job at being incredibly mean. This dude is just a jerk. I'm sorry, y'all. I mean, okay, yes, it's good for the plot, and Oscar Isaac does a great job here. You can tell he's having fun. Surprisingly, doesn't get as much time on screen that I thought he would, but when he's there, there is this bravado, there's this impact, and he commands the screen. But again, he's just mean. But what I thought was a really cool turn of events was in the second act, close to the end of the second act, we noticed that Miguel O'Hara has a bit of a soft side to him. So there's a moment of reflection, and Oscar Isaac really helps bring it home. Oh, and sometimes he's actually kind of funny. Okay, yeah, he's got the humor on lock too. So outside of the main cast though, those are like my notable shout outs in the main cast, but I do want to talk more so about some of the characters that are supporting, and they actually took a step up as well, like Brian Tyree Henry as Miles' dad. But in this movie, he gets a little bit more to work with, and he nails it. And I know we already mentioned Luna Lauren Velez as Ria, so I do want to talk a little bit about these other two notable standouts, like Karin Soni as Paviter Prabhakar. I really hope I pronounced that properly, guys, but he plays Spider-Man India, and oh my goodness gracious, I knew nothing about this character before coming into Across the Spider-Verse, and leaving the theater, I'm like, okay, Amazon, purchase all of the Spider-Man India comics. I want them all, okay? This character is insanely cool, he's funny, and he's actually pretty relatable on an emotional level. There's this moment where he's got to choose between his romantic interest and someone else, and I'm like, wow, like this is cool. Yes, of course, similar to the other canon events for Spider-Man, but there's a different level of emotion here. He's playful, he's jovial, and he kind of floats in a good way. Like, it just is such a great performance, and I love what he did here. And then there's one of his other castmates, y'all, Daniel Kaluuya as Spider-Punk, or Hobie, or is it Hobby? I don't know, I think it's Hobie. But man, it is cool. The art style for Spider-Punk was dope, alright? It was so awesome. Had this very punk rock vibe to it. It looked like aggressive, like the art looked aggressive, and he was just having fun. Daniel Kaluuya was chewing up every scene he was in, and it was just incredible. Oh, and I guess we can't move on without me talking about Jason Schwartzman as the Spot. Oh gosh, I almost said something that would have been spoilery. Okay, let's just say the Spot fights Miles, but I don't want to say what I wanted to say, so what I will just comment on is this. Jason Schwartzman gives a solid performance. Is it my favorite in the movie? No, but it's still solid, and there are some moments where I'm like, huh, this dude's got a mean streak to him. He's got like a little mean side to him. All right. Not as mean as Miguel, of course, but, you know, he did a solid job. So overall, the cast was just, gosh, they were gelling. They were gelling, and it made this movie so much better. And if you're a fan of Into the Spider-Verse, you're probably excited for the soundtrack in the sequel, just like I was. And let me tell you, the soundtrack and the score doesn't disappoint. It was on another level. Alright, so for the soundtrack, Metro Boomin was contracted to basically produce the entire soundtrack. I think he did produce the entire soundtrack, and I actually like that they went with a consistent theme in the soundtrack. Like, you can tell Metro Boomin's, the way he constructs beats is very notable to me because I do listen to a lot of hip-hop, so I understand his style, and it actually works very well here having one producer, and all of the songs, wherever they're placed in the movie, it's just perfect. I've had Calling in my head, stuck in my head for like a week now, and you know what? I'm kind of glad. It's a good song. And then there's the score by Daniel Pemberton, and you know what, guys, listen, I love listening to scores outside of films, but I was a bit surprised at how much the score in the first film didn't work for me outside of the context of the film. Within the context of Into the Spider-Verse, his score is awesome, but outside of it, I had a hard time really connecting with it. I will say though, in Across the Spider-Verse, Daniel Pemberton's score is the A+. I want to say I give it the A+ of the film. It's one of those elements where it was an A in the first movie, it's an A+ here, and it works for me in and out of the film. And that's because it feels much more epic, and if anything, there are some moments here that are the Spider-Man moments that hit harder because of the score. It's epic, right? It is just so awesome. And also, there are some moments that are pretty sad, and then the score kicks in, and I'm like, what are we doing? Are you trying to make me cry? So by this point, you guys are probably thinking, what could you possibly talk about in the negative section, right? You have all of these amazing technical elements, you have amazing acting and directing. What could be negative about this movie? Well, I don't really have many notes. I have like 2 slight negatives. So the first one is that there's maybe a little bit too much plot convenience in that third act. There are certain things that our characters do that I thought, you're doing that so easily now. You couldn't do that before? Like, what happened? What stopped you? So it's a little bit too convenient for my liking. I noticed that it didn't break the movie for me. It hardly even broke immersion for me. But I thought, okay, I'll suspend belief, but I gotta make the note because it came to my mind that maybe this was a little too easy for certain characters in the third act. However, guys, there's this next negative that I really hope it's not a thing with the movie and maybe more a thing with the theater, because I am a sucker for sound, okay? So the sound mixing in our theater was basura. Not great, guys, okay? There was hardly any bass, and the voices, it sounded pretty low. So I'm like, what's going on here? It was kind of tough to hear Gwen in the beginning of the movie, and then at times the sound effects weren't hitting. There were some scenes where you could see a large explosion, but you can feel the large explosion. Now, I do want to watch this movie again, of course. I'm going to rewatch it this weekend, and I'm going to my local AutoNation IMAX theater, so I'm like, if the sound isn't good there, then it's a movie issue. But if the sound is great in that IMAX theater, it was an issue with the theater. However, there were other critics I've been seeing on Twitter that I've either spoken with or I'm friends with, and I've noticed that they said their audio was bad too. So I'm scared that maybe it's a movie issue, and if it is, that's not great because the sound should be great. The first movie had good sound mixing, so I don't know what happened here, but I'm hoping it's just a theater issue for me. But guys, those are all of the notes I have for the negative section, because outside of that, this is a perfect Spider-Man film, a perfect animated adventure, and it's a freaking 5 out of 5. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse undoubtedly left an impact on me. What I witnessed wasn't just another great movie. It broke the barrier in my mind of what movies can accomplish. It's rare to come away nowadays from a film and think, this is going to break so many boundaries. And that's what Across the Spider-Verse did. It is a cinematic achievement in every sense of the word. I will continue to boast about this film. I will continue to give it the praise it deserves. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, what they have been able to curate and really develop is beyond words. It's beautiful. And I think that this movie is going to go down in history books as paving a new way yet again for the way we view animated movies and the way we view comic book movies. If I had to really rank this film, honestly, okay, listen, I still have Spider-Man 2 as my number 1. Into the Spider-Verse is number 3, but number 2 is Across the Spider-Verse. Yes, I do like Across the Spider-Verse better than Into the Spider-Verse. It's a slim margin, but it's there for me. And this film is just excellent. It has the best thematic elements of a Spider-Man film I've seen in a very long time, and it's head and shoulders above any live-action Spider-Man film we've seen since Spider-Man 2. So guys, there you have it. That's my real review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I just want to hug Phil Lord. You know, if he's going to be here in Miami, I just want to tell him how amazing he is, because, you know, he's Miami's own, I just got to say. And I'm just so happy we got what we got, because, guys, this is a movie that I'm going to show to my kids, and my kids are going to show to their kids, and it's going to live on forever, because it really is that kind of film. But y'all, I want to hear what you have to say about Across the Spider-Verse, so get out down below in the comments and let me know what you'd rate it and where it ranks for you among every Spider-Man film that you've seen. And if you haven't already, hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel and tap on that bell so you don't miss out on more reviews just like this. Guys, thanks for giving me the time to just talk about this film, because it's so nice when you can come away from a film and say it is a perfect 5 out of 5. I love it. I love that feeling. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. What was that? Is it my favorite movie of the year? Of course it is so far. What?